Good evening, everybody. I'm Dick Schneider from the Tri-Valley group of the Sierra Club, and along with co-hosts Dubliners for Change, Friends of Livermore, and Pleasanton voters, we thank you for coming to the Tri-Valley at Crossroads Forum. The hosts of tonight's forum are citizen-led grassroots organizations whose purpose is to educate the public about crucial issues that affect our Tri-Valley. Sierra Club, as many of you probably know, is a national organization, but we have chapters and regional groups in all 50 states to deal with more local issues. The Tri-Valley group covers the 3 Tri-Valley cities of Livermore, Dublin, and Pleasanton, as well as the surrounding 200,000 acres of unincorporated land, from the San Joaquin County line to the Dublin-Pleasanton Ridge line. We address both city issues of growth and infrastructure, as well as more traditional environmental issues of air and water quality, waste and solid waste and wastewater disposal, open space and agriculture, and preservation of habitat for plants and wildlife. We also endorse candidates in elections. On the table in the lobby is some of our literature, our endorsements, and a sign-up sheet to get our monthly meeting agendas. You don't have to be a member to attend our meetings, but of course we hope people will join and become active in our group. Tonight, we would like to give the City Council and mayor candidates from Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore an opportunity to answer questions and discuss development issues and infrastructure challenges within the Tri-Valley. We hope that their answers will help you make informed decisions when you vote this November. We're pleased to have Christopher Schlees as our moderator tonight. Christopher is a local attorney and agricultural land proponent, a former board member of the Tri-Valley Conservancy, and has served as an active member of the Sierra Club for the past 36 years. So thank you, Christopher, for being our moderator tonight.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you very much to the sponsors for inviting me to serve as the moderator tonight. I'm honored to serve, and I look forward, candidates, to a spirited discussion of very important issues. Candidates from each city will answer questions that have been submitted by both the hosts and the public. I'd like to thank all of you who have submitted questions online. Due to the number of questions received and the similarities of the questions, we have consolidated them, ones that are similar, and strive to include as many questions and as much substance as time would allow. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. The candidates each have 90 seconds to introduce themselves, then 30 to 60 seconds to answer questions asked by myself, and then 60 seconds to make a closing statement. We will let the candidates know whether it's a 60-second question or a 30-second question. In the case of Pleasanton, they will all be 60-second questions. I'd like to thank timekeepers Al Exner and Carla Brown for assisting us tonight. They will notify the candidates when they have 30 seconds left to speak by holding up a blue card. When a red card is held up, their time is up and they must stop speaking. We ask the audience to be respectful of the candidates, not hold up signs, no booing, no cheering. When the question is completed, you will have an opportunity to applaud and appreciate for the candidates' participation. And one unscripted item is, if anybody has a cell phone on, probably a good idea to turn it off. With that, we will proceed, and we're going to give 90 seconds, and we're going to start my left to right, but we're going to mix it up as we go. So, candidate Testa, would you like to open with a 90-second answer, introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm running for Pleasanton City Council to represent the concerns of the residents. We have a responsibility to preserve what we value in our community for those who come next. I support slow and smart growth policies, meeting state mandates, not more, then ensuring that our infrastructure keeps up with growth. I will protect our small town character, considering impacts on schools, traffic, water, and quality of life. I have extensive experience with the City of Pleasanton. I will start working for the residents from day one. I have served 11 years as a Pleasanton City Commissioner. I've served on numerous Pleasanton committees and task forces for both the City of Pleasanton and Pleasanton Unified. I am the only candidate that has attended over 100 school board meetings, consistently advocating for better planning for growth to prepare for increasing enrollment. I have attended statewide meetings to join with other communities to oppose state overreach. I have lobbied state legislators in Sacramento and attended state legislative hearings to testify against bills that would result in high-density housing mandates in Pleasanton and the Tri-Valley. I will stand for residents, not special interest.
Candidate Strang.
Thank you. I would like to thank the organizers for tonight's event. I would like to thank all of you for attending. And I also want to acknowledge my fellow candidates. I can tell you that running for office takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of energy, and I fully respect everybody who takes on this task. Pleasanton's been my hometown for nearly 40 years. My family first moved here in 1980. I'm a proud graduate of Amador Valley High School. My wife also graduated from Amador. And during my time in Pleasanton, the city has grown quite a bit. When I first moved here with my family, it was about 30,000 residents, and I believe now we're up over 80,000 residents. But during that time, we've managed to maintain the core of really what makes Pleasanton the best place to live in the Bay Area. We have thriving neighborhoods, we have a wonderful downtown, we have outstanding parks and community services, and we have a really strong economy. That doesn't happen by accident. Our city leaders and our staff have managed growth very well over the years. I personally served 9 years on Park and Rec and several additional years on the Bike Pedestrian Trails Committee. I've delivered 2 master plans, a dog park, Bernal Phase 2, neighborhood parks, increased bike lanes and expanded trails. I serve because I love Pleasanton, and I'm running to maintain our high quality of life. Thank you again.
Candidate Nera, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers for this. It's been my honor to serve on the City Council for the past 5 years, representing the residents of Pleasanton. During the past 4 years, we've accomplished much, such as opening 3 parks, establishing a plan to pay down our unfunded liability, lowering our garbage rates, and updating the bicycle pedestrian master plan. We live in a wonderful community, but we can always improve the quality of life. In the next 4 years, I will focus on these areas: maintaining and improving our quality of life, fiscal sustainability, environmental stewardship. How will I accomplish these priorities? By continuing to listen to you, the residents of our wonderful city, and capitalizing on my years of civic experience here in Pleasanton. You know, nothing says small town more than our downtown. We need to finish updating our downtown specific plan, continue our strong support for our police and fire, and our continued collaboration with the school district. I want to get started on a new library civic center too in the next 4 years. Fiscal sustainability by promoting a strong economy, balanced budgets, adequate reserves, environmental stewardship, expansion of our recycled water for landscaping, implementation of our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and preserving our open space. I'm here tonight to share my ideas that I hope will give you a better idea about what's important to me, and I will continue to work hard for you to maintain our small town feel and quality of life for you, your family, and the years to come.
Thank you. Candidate Ledoux.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for taking the time on Friday evening to come out here. My wife and I moved into Pleasanton several years ago, and we have a young family, and I think that I bring a fresh and energetic perspective because I grew up in Iowa in a small town that was very similar to Pleasanton, and a couple things that I grew up with that I hope my son grows up with is that it's a safe community, remain safe, as well as having some of the best schools in the entire district. Both my wife and I graduated with our masters from Boston University, and one of the things that makes myself unique from the other candidates is that I come from the public sector. I have 12 years as a police officer here in Alameda County, and previously I was a dispatcher and a reserve firefighter in Southern California. And much of what I see that I bring that's unique is the diversification. And as we look into our portfolio to who sits on our council, I think it's important that we make sure that we have a diverse viewpoint. I support mindful growth, and when I say that, I'm specifically talking about making sure that our future growth adjusts for our critical infrastructure and that that is supported with our future. Secondly, I believe that we should collaborate with our schools to come up with creative solutions to drive the best teachers into our school district. Next, I also believe that all of this should be accomplished while maintaining our Pleasanton charm. And so as we go forward, I think that one of the things that I bring that's unique is addressing everything through a lens of public safety and ensuring that our community remains safe. And I thank everyone for coming out again.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, again 60 seconds, is as follows. Each of you have spoken in support of our wonderful downtown in Pleasanton and its small town feel. Moving the Civic Center and library buildings to the Burnell Park is a project that is under review. It would vacate a large site in downtown. Would you support 3 or more story buildings, residential and mixed commercial with housing zoning on a significant part of the current Civic Center site? And please explain why. And for this question, we'll start with candidate Strang.
Thank you. I do support a limited housing element in downtown Pleasanton. I believe that people want to live in an area like downtown Pleasanton. Whether you're retired or perhaps you're a young family, you like to live in an area where you can walk to restaurants, and that creates a vital downtown area. I do support the current 3-story limit, but I think that if anything were to be built higher than that, it would actually need to have a significant community benefit, so I would certainly look very carefully at that. I also want to create active pedestrian environments downtown as well. I support the current planning process. I think the planning process should continue to move forward, and I will support those recommendations.
Thank you. Candidate Aaron?
Thank you. So the current height limit in the core of downtown is 40 feet, and I support that. I do not want to increase it, and I think that pretty much will limit the height to, or the number of stories to 3 feet, possibly 4, but in any event, I don't support going above 40 feet. I also do not support residential on the ground floor anywhere, again, in the central core of our downtown. Rather, I'd like to see active uses on the ground floor that will contribute to foot traffic and thereby a vibrant downtown. I also am only in support at this point of looking at moving the library and a community center to Burnell and leaving the rest of City Hall for another day for later council, so that we don't get ahead of ourselves in the financing and planning of that part of town. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ledoux.
Yes. One of the advantages to having 3 stories is that we certainly accomplish some of our housing needs by doing that, which would preserve more land that would remain open space. And so I certainly think in that corridor that also is beneficial, because people aren't driving to restaurants. They can get out and walk to those restaurants. They can support and help encourage economic vitality in our downtown, which is very much, I think, the backbone of our community. And so I would support that. Certainly nothing above that, as that would start to change the core of our downtown. So there's that benefit. Also, going forward, I would support the repurposing of the library that could later become our City Hall and civic properties while we go through the various phases of the Burnell project. So certainly I think that's a benefit.
Thank you. And candidate Testa.
I absolutely support a larger, improved library and community center. I think those are needed, wonderful amenities that would benefit the community. I don't support most of the redevelopment program. The Burnell property was preserved for citizens' amenities. It was never intended to be offices, city offices and the expense of moving our police station for the sole purpose of moving it, to the tune of, the project is estimated right now at $200 million. I don't think the community will benefit from a lot of housing in the Civic Center, the current Civic Center site. I want to see benefits for the community. I think that we can recycle some of the buildings that are there right now to meet our needs for our city offices and leave the police station where it is, saving the community a significant amount of money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question is again 60 seconds. We're still on the topic, excuse me, I think that's the one part. Okay. Okay, there are over 1,000 acres of land around the lakes and quarries between Pleasanton and Livermore. That area is under consideration for development entitled the East Pleasanton Specific Plan. The next council may approve development rights in this area to satisfy our regional housing needs and assessments, also known as REMA. What are your concerns about the impacts to current Pleasanton residents? Candidate Nair?
Well, I support starting to plan the east side in 2019. And we're going to have a certified housing element by January of 2023. And if you work backwards on all the steps that it takes to get there, if we don't start planning it in mid-2019, we're not going to make that certified housing element, which causes more problems. So I think it's essential that we plan it. There's 2 applications in now on the land. I don't want to see piecemeal development. I want to see a comprehensive plan so that we get all of the infrastructure that we need to support whatever ends up getting built there, including a school, including land for potentially a fire station. All those are concerns. I'm also concerned about the traffic. And we need to answer the question, does it make sense to connect Charro Road to Stanley? There's some concern about cut through from Dublin, crossing over 680. I can see that looking at a map, but we need to understand that. So I guess that's it. That's not a fair question for 60 seconds. It's a much bigger question than that.
Candidate Ledoux, your answer, please.
Yes, so I think we take advantage and leverage this opportunity to plan and have a voice at what that's going to look like. And talking with a lot of the community members, many people would prefer to have a community that they could feel comfortable living in, having their children play at parks, as opposed to a piecemeal plan. And as it stands right now, as Kathy Nara mentioned, there are plans to the county to go ahead and start housing developments, the first one at 300 units. And then if that goes forward, and we don't have a say at the table, then it's going to become piecemeal. And if it becomes piecemeal, we're not going to have an opportunity to go ahead and set up that infrastructure and make sure that it's a viable community that has all the infrastructure we need, which would include probably a firehouse, certainly another school, and a community that we could take our families to. So I think that it's more beneficial that we plan it and make it a community rather than keep it various components of it being both commercial and industrial and have little islands of housing units.
Candidate Tista.
Wanting to represent the Pleasanton residents, our 2017 city survey says that the top concern for Pleasanton residents is housing growth and traffic, impacts of growth. Over 1,000 residents objected when the east side came forward last time, 6 years ago. If we had planned it then, we would have planned it very different than how we would be planning it today. We will plan it differently now than we will when we get our next RENA numbers in. I think we should wait until we know what RENA numbers we're facing. I think we should not panic. We should not rush to, as long as we have a certified housing element, we will be insulated from any pressure from the state. We need to wait until we have those future numbers and then plan.
Thank you. And Candidate Strand.
I also support restarting the planning process for the east side. I believe we need to be thoughtful and careful when we plan. We can plan parks and amenities and a diversified housing element as well. I believe that planning lets us incorporate that housing element into the RHNA requirements that are coming, and then we can spread the impact throughout the city. And let me also answer this question perhaps in a different way. A San Francisco lawmaker looked at a parking lot at BART and said, I would love to put a bunch of houses there. If we have a large area of land that is unplanned, what is to prevent another lawmaker from saying, Pleasanton doesn't really have a plan for that property, but I do. So that would be my primary concern if we don't have a plan in place, is that someone will come and identify that land, and who knows what they may want to put there. So that's why I support restarting the planning process.
We're still on the topic of the East Pleasanton specific plan. The environmental impact report studies today involve a full extension of El Charro Boulevard to Stanley Boulevard. What are your views on the proposed road extension, which would be routed between some Zone 7 chain of lakes? And we'll start with you, candidate Ledoux.
Certainly. So my perspective is going to come from a public safety aspect. A couple of things. First off, we're nearing the final phase of our Expressway 84, which is slated to go here or be developed the final third here soon. That's going to give us 4 ways at 55 miles per hour, so hopefully that'll alleviate some of that traffic, cut through traffic on El Charro. Secondly, as we look at El Charro as being a cut through, I'm always reminded that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if that pulls some traffic there, then that's certainly going to alleviate some of the other traffic on our city streets. And so while that's not the ideal outcome, it will probably alleviate some traffic and certainly alleviate some of the cut-through traffic going to BART. So there's that aspect of it that we should certainly keep in mind. And then finally, as we examine how El Charro is going to play out in the end, we certainly have an opportunity to make it so that it's not an ideal cut-through, which could consist of roundabouts or stoplights or certainly other aspects from an enforcement angle that would make it less ideal to be cut through as opposed to those using the expressway.
Thank you. Candidate Kester.
Again, representing Pleasanton residents now as opposed to future, I think that there's a lot of negative impacts with El Charro, and I have a lot of concerns about them. It will bring more cut-through traffic through our community. The cost is $90 million. It's really designed to give regional relief, but has local impacts on our Pleasanton community. So I am very concerned about the negative impacts of El Charro Road.
Candidate.
I don't currently support the extension of El Charro as a cut-through. Currently, I believe that it should be part of the East Side planning process. I agree actually with candidate Ledoux. I think that Highway 84 is going to go a long way to alleviating some of the traffic concerns once that road gets widened. So I would not at this time support El Charro as a cut-through.
Okay. Candidate Nero.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I think we need to do a study and really understand the impacts today and trying to project whether or not El Charro connected to Stanley is going to help us or create cut-through traffic through that part of Pleasanton and negate some of the good that we think we're going to get from Highway 84. I just don't think we have enough information, and if we don't need to connect it, it dramatically affects how much building needs to be done to cover the costs to connect it. So I think it really behooves us to get some information and get some facts. In terms of it going through between the chain of lakes, I think we have a huge opportunity to have a nice, beautiful roadway between the lakes with walking path and some nice landscape and water and a few birds and wildlife, and I see that as a potential real amenity to our city.
Thank you. Pleasanton Voters is an organization focused on the impacts of growth and how they may affect our quality of life. And you'll be hearing from their president at the end of this discussion. A recent city-sponsored survey of residents ranked too much growth as their #1 concern. I think we heard about that a little earlier. Have you ever campaigned or spoken against a business development or housing project in Pleasanton to control our growth. Please specify one or more projects which you have opposed and explain why. Or, if you have not opposed any project, please explain why not. And I'd like to start, I'm trying to mix it up here a little bit, so with you, candidate Strang.
Oh, excellent. So, interesting question. I can't think of a specific initiative that I have campaigned for or against. The one I suppose that I would point to would be the Costco initiative. I was actually in support of Costco, and I know that's not necessarily a development issue, but it is a housing development issue, but it is certainly an economic development issue that impacts our region. I supported the Costco measure because I want to keep those tax dollars here in Pleasanton, and I believe a plan is in place to alleviate some of the traffic concerns that are around that project. But that would probably be the best example I can think of.
Thank you. Candidate Testa?
I've opposed numerous, more than I could probably think over 30 years. And the reason for that being is, while I believe that housing is, of course, an important and can be a wonderful asset to a community. We need houses. But our schools are all impacted. Our infrastructure, the traffic has become so severe. Without the infrastructure in place, to continue to plan, to continue to allow housing is a negative impact on our existing community. So, I've opposed numerous, actively opposed numerous housing projects.
Candidate Ledoux?
Yes, sir. So, one that comes to mind that's not necessarily Pleasanton, but would be potentially in Pleasanton is what I just mentioned, the 300 houses that's out in the county land on the east side. And as previously mentioned, I think that this is a missed opportunity because if that housing development goes in, we'll lose the opportunity to have an overall larger plan. And in that plan, if it becomes piecemeal, we're not able to ensure that we have the critical infrastructure in place, certainly not the schools, and we miss out on the opportunity to bring that land into our community. With the county to bring that land over, if we have a plan that develops it, that is something that we can acquire from the county. That brings in the tax revenue, the developer impact fees, and certainly, more importantly, the opportunity for us to address the critical infrastructure, including our schools. The other thing to keep in mind is that currently in the Bay Area, we have 6 jobs for every unit of residence that's being created. That is a huge deficit, and so I believe that we have an obligation to try to bring some of the housing local so that people aren't commuting from as far away and impacting the pollution in our freeways.
Candidate Nair?
Thank you. So we had a spike in growth because we had to catch up with all the housing that we had to zone for because previous councils ignored the state mandates. You know, in hindsight, had they done what they were supposed to do, our growth would have been much more even over the years instead of the huge spike of all the apartments that I think we're all well aware of. I don't think I've actually opposed any housing project. Rather, I have worked hard to reduce the number of units from what was submitted. An example would be Lund Ranch and taking it from 50 down to 43 houses and trying to get what makes sense for the property. There are a couple projects that are winding through that I am not comfortable with. One of them is the 1 million square feet of warehousing that's being proposed in East Pleasanton near the transfer station. The other one I'm not comfortable with is this paternal project that's out by the golf course and the number of units that are being proposed there.
Okay, thank you. This is another 60-second question. 60-second answer. I'll probably get a red in less than 60 seconds. Assume you were elected to the Pleasanton City Council and the decision to introduce highly purified, recycled water into our drinking water went to the council. Some residents refer to this as toilet to tap. Would you vote for or against it, and why? And Candidate Nero, we'll start with you. I know you just spoke. You might want to take a drink of water, but it's your turn.
Don't start the timer then. So we currently have, back up, there was a roundtable consisting of Zone 7 and the 4 retailers, of which Pleasanton is one, that was formed a couple years ago to look at diversifying our water supply so we're not so dependent on the state. One of the things that was identified in this roundtable was this recycled potable water, and we currently have a feasibility study, both engineering and cost out, that will probably still 6 to 8 months away before we get it back. So at this point, I don't have enough information to say. I can tell you though that I am not going to approve anything under question that would make the water unsafe, because I mean, I drink it too, my husband drinks it, so it's got to be safe. As a process engineer in an earlier life, I would need to understand the process reliability of it. What are the safeguards if somewhere there's a failure in cleaning up the water? How does it recover? How does it be kept from continuing on and injecting into the ground, or however they handle it? So the answer is I don't have enough information at this point.
Candidate Ledoux.
Yes. So when we talk about that, one of the things I also would like to wait to see what the study looks like and what we get from information. However, I would tell you that I'm completely supportive of diversifying our water supply, because having a single source of supply leaves us as a city very vulnerable from any kind of domestic incident, also from an earthquake, and anything that disrupts that one source of water supply would leave us very vulnerable if that was contaminated or compromised. Certainly there's other options besides just reusing recycled water. That may not even be a feasibility with the amount that's available, but we can look at other options like desalinization and other sources. So I would say, again, from my diversification that I mentioned in my opening statement, certainly we should be looking at a diversified water source of supply, so that in the event of any kind of incident, whether it's natural or some sort of terrorist act, that we can go ahead and provide for our community.
Candidate Strand.
I agree that we need to diversify our water portfolio. I certainly believe that we're heading into an era where we'll see more frequent droughts. And I believe we are doing a disservice, quite frankly, to our children if we're not studying a variety of ways to ensure our water safety. There was, a technical feasibility study, and that study did find that the alternatives actually improve drinking water quality. But I would not support it without getting approval from the voters first. I believe this is an issue that the voters should decide. I don't believe this is something that the city council is going to decide unilaterally. So I believe that we should study it. We should have a very rational discussion about it. It's very easy to say toilet to tap and just end the conversation. But if we're actually studying the issue and we're being educated about it and we put it to the voters, then it came to the city council, I would consider it.
And Candidate Testa.
At this time, I would not support it. In 2000, the topic came forward to the Pleasanton community. It was hotly debated, and it was decided that the science wasn't there. The filtration wasn't safe enough. It was voted down by 70% of the Pleasanton voters. So certainly it would need to go again, and I'm glad that our current city council has agreed that it needs to be voted on by the community. I've asked a lot of people. I have some very credible water scientists that have been advising me, and what I'm hearing is that the science still isn't there, that we're at least 10 years away from the kind of safety guarantees that I would want to see before we risk contaminating our drinking aquifer. At this point, I would say that we should not accept the risks or the staggering additional cost of the recycled water, 5 times or more than what our current water source is right now. So I would not.
Okay. We have gotten to the end of the amalgamated questions. Do we have time for one more? If you could kind of well, I'm going to pose it then. In my professional life, I pose questions every so often. So, and this one's easy. I have an office in downtown Pleasanton, and it's been there since 1995. And before that, I was in downtown Pleasanton for the previous 12 years. And there has been nothing but more and more difficulty as each year progresses in finding a parking place. And in my personal opinion, there's a lot of reasons for that. But the solutions have not been pouring out of City Hall as I would have hoped over the last 3 decades. So, if elected, what would be your focus and initiatives to deal with the difficult situation of parking in downtown Pleasanton? And we'll start with candidate Ledoux.
So one of the things I would suggest that we're looking over on the Burnell property is a parking structure that could be jointly used with ACE. Much like Livermore has, this parking structure could serve the commuters, certainly as ACE is looking to increase its train frequency, but also on off hours, primarily when downtown is thriving on weekends and Friday nights, the commuter traffic would be then gone and we could utilize it for our downtown. We'd certainly probably need to have a commuter, some sort of trolley or something designed to shuttle people, certainly when the weather is inclement and whatnot. But I think that that's an opportunity that we can leverage and partner with both ACE, the fairgrounds. I think would have a multifaceted support or usage, rather. Additionally, down on the south side of Main Street, there's 80 additional parking spaces that will be coming forward. And then as we look, I would be interested in seeing the right-of-way next to the tracks, if some of that would be available. Put some lighting up so that employees would feel safe. But that's certainly close enough that people could walk. So there's a few aspects that I would certainly explore.
Candidate Strain?
We have a variety of short and long-term solutions that we're currently considering. We've recently opened a new lot off St. Mary's, which I believe does need some improvements and some lighting to make that feel safe. Candidate Ledoux mentioned potential plans for a lot on the right-of-way. That would be probably behind McKay's down on the Gate 90s side of town. And certainly, as we look at the development of a new library on the civic center, that could certainly have a parking structure associated with it. We also have land right now, quite frankly, that we can start to look at across the street from the current library on the other side of the ACE tracks. I think if there was a parking structure there that could serve both the current library and ACE, I think we should definitely explore it. So I think there are options.
Candidate Teston.
Yes. Yes. Well, already approved is the completing of the paving of the railroad corridor. So there's a lot of space along there, and by paving it and striping it, it's anticipated that it will significantly increase our existing parking. But that won't be enough. We still need to work together with ACE on a future shared space. But one thing I would like to bring forward is in the downtown specific plan, a parking structure is shown where the proposed mixed-use residential is anticipated being. When I look at that proposed and they say, well, this will be a parking structure for downtown, I see a parking structure that's going to fill up with the housing and the office space that is being proposed there. So that concerns me.
And candidate Nairn.
Thank you. So a priority of the City Council has been to fix the south end of the railroad corridor. We have the money for it. It's currently in design. It will increase, or will add about 80 spaces and plus a path alongside of it, much like is behind the Firehouse Arts Theater. So that will be a part of it. We're also, we've been looking at some land near Main Street, kind of between Main and First, that could potentially add a few more spaces if we're able to work something out. But I think long-term, the answer is a parking structure. I support looking at one on the property that we just bought across the street from the library. And if you dream a little bit and imagine a little bit, we can have a shuttle, an autonomous shuttle in character of our downtown to make a loop on Main Street and back down on Peters to take people, so those concerned about walking, we can address that for them. And I think that would be a nice amenity to get the cars away from Main Street, but yet still get people there to be able to shop and eat and so forth.
Okay, thank you. We've used up the questions. I'd like to introduce you to Kelly Cousins.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, candidates. We really appreciate your coming out on a busy Friday night. We know, for example, Joe came over an hour and a half in traffic, so it's not easy to do all the things that the candidates do. And we really appreciate you running, number one. This is, it's a labor of very much a commitment to the community, and we appreciate you coming forward to do that job. And we also appreciate those who are attending and finding out more about our candidates, because we all have a variety of issues that are important to each of our communities, but as our sponsors know, we all have very similar issues in the three groups that are coming today. As Mr. Schneider pointed out, our group is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that doesn't have a lot of funding that backs, candidates or even forums like this. So it's just from your donations and your interest in keeping educated that we exist. So thank you again.
Candidates, I'm going to close with your closing statements, and candidate Strang, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. Thank you again for everybody for attending. I've truly enjoyed this campaigning experience. I love talking to residents. I love forums just like this, and I've actually loved getting to know my candidates, my fellow candidates. Some folks have asked me what differentiates me from the other candidates, especially when it comes to filling an open seat. The first thing I would say is experience. I don't think that the city council is an entry-level job. I do think that you need to have some experience working with staff, running meetings, planning and reviewing projects, and getting lots of public input. It's good to understand the issues, but it's just as good, if not better sometimes, to know how the city works and how to get things done. The second thing I think you need to consider is having someone there who knows how to build a consensus, someone who perhaps doesn't have a deep-seated agenda or a rigid mindset. You need to be an active listener, and you need to make sure that you can find a path forward that works well for as many stakeholders as possible. You need to be able to represent all residents, not just those who shout the loudest. And I'm proud to say that during my time serving Pleasanton, I believe I've built a reputation as a consensus builder. And then the last thing I'll say is I love Pleasanton. I love to serve. Pleasanton's in my blood. It has given me a foundation for a really terrific life. And that's why I serve. That's why I'm running. Because I want to continue to maintain our quality of life. And I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
Candidate Testa, please.
Me? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, mix it up.
Okay. I'd like to just take a minute and share that the message that Pleasanton is facing a huge threat with the state intrusion of our zoning control. It essentially is mandating our city to approve projects involving relatively small amounts of affordable that are qualified affordable. It doesn't create workforce housing, but the remaining 80% is market rate housing. It's going to put such a big burden on our infrastructure. Our traffic is already extreme. Our schools, every Pleasanton campus is over capacity. The 5 to 10 story mandates of high density buildings will dwarf our current community that's basically a 2, maximum 3 story community. So we need strong representation that's going to work together with other communities across the state, within other communities within the Tri-Valley to push back on that. I've spent 30 years already serving this community. I've addressed growth issues, school issues, and quality of life issues. I have a lengthy and diverse record of service to Pleasanton. I've sat on nonprofit boards, REACH, where we've developed affordable housing for disabled adults, and NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm a small business owner. My husband and I have raised our family here. We've lived 30 years in Pleasanton. I hope to have the opportunity. I'd be honored to serve as a Pleasanton City Council member.
Thank you. Candidate Mira, please.
Thank you. First, I want to comment that I am on the record as saying with the recycled water that I would put it on the ballot before I would vote to approve it, assuming that the study came back warranting that. Thank you for coming. I'd like to sum up by saying that experience matters, and I've had 2 decades worth, having served on numerous committees, commissions, task forces, both locally and regionally. I've enjoyed the support of a wide cross-section of the community, because I believe it's essential that we work with everyone. I've gained endorsements from both our police and firefighters, the Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee, Congressman Swalwell, both of our state legislators, Alameda County Supervisors Miley and Haggerty, all 5 mayors of the Tri-Valley, and all 5 of our Pleasanton School Board trustees, to name a few. I hope that I can count on your vote as your council member for the next 4 years. I think my record of service demonstrates that I am deeply committed to our community, and I want to continue to finish what we've started. Over the next 4 years, I will focus on our overall quality of life, fiscal responsibility, and our environmental stewardship. Thank you, and please visit my website, kathynarum.com, for more information.
Thank you, and Candidate Ledoux will give you the last word.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate everyone spending a little bit of their time on a Friday night away from their families. So as we look at the current makeup of our city council, everybody virtually comes from a private sector background, and everyone sitting at this table, with the exception of myself, comes from a private sector, from employment. I think one of the unique things that I bring to city council is coming from the public sector. In my conversations with community members, a couple of the things that tend to be the top priorities is our schools and our crime. In Pleasanton, we've seen a 28% increase in park-run violent crimes over the last 6 years, and that certainly should alarm many of us. Although the regional crimes are up, that certainly doesn't allow or shouldn't be something that we should accept. Some of the things that I think that I bring to the table that's unique is that I've sat on task forces addressing homelessness. I've also sat on task forces where we come up with creative solutions to dealing with mental health or individuals combating mental health problems. I think that I can leverage, or I support leveraging crime reduction through technology, as that's certainly more cost effective than hiring personnel to address those issues. I'm familiar with being transparent and accountable in my actions. Every day that I go to work, I don't know what problem I'm going to face, but I deal with it the best that I can in a clear and transparent way. And I think that much of that can be transferred into city council, and that we can go ahead and open up and share why we do what we do in our city. There's certainly a lot of questions about how do we get from one store not paying certain fees and others do. And so I would advocate that we have a town hall and share this information with the community. And so as we look to vote this November in 31 days, I hope that you'll consider voting for me. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all. It's very interesting to hear the differing answers in the areas in which you agree, and there's a consensus. And so, audience, please, a round of applause for the speakers.
Thank you, Chris.